we haven't yet integrated all repositories to send SSE events. So it could be a case where we don't get all the children. But in the best of worlds, we get all the SSE events from the database. We generate the CD event and we publish it on the bus. And I have snippet on the top there where we actually use the link section element with the ID from the child SSE events. And it's obviously a lot more. It could be 4 or 5 children to the parent. The model that in an Eiffel way represent this relationship is this one, and it's very similar to the one defined in the issue on the Eiffel board. We have the parent at the top, who in the CD event is defined as a cause, because that caused this CD event, and then we have now 3 children, which is defined as elements to the CD event. As a note here that as we don't know about the pitfalls with this approach, the only thing that we have thought about is that we are aware that this will in time generate a huge amount of CD events, good or bad, we don't know, right or wrong, what we will learn today. Therefore, to connect back to the issue by Mindspec is that this is a topic, at least, that we as a team are very interested in. That how have you done it on your part, in your companies, in your teams? Or if you haven't a solution, like what is your philosophy or mental approach to the representation of the city's SEC event and how it should relate to each other? Or when I have talked about this topic, I see the SEC as a representation from Git. So one SEC event perhaps should mirror more the state in Git, because that is the not logical connection, but maybe like the actual connection, that is what we do. Maybe a company who doesn't use Git don't see the link in here, but that is open for discussion. Yeah, leading up to the model, a little bit maybe recognize this model from yesterday. I just threw it up on the board when I jumped in for Bojan. That this is a zoom in, it's a zoom out from the service perspective, but zoom in on the bigger model I showed yesterday, very quick. We have, I don't know how to point in. I'm not that used to PowerPoint American directly. Later. We have this submodule service over here, and we have a parent, we have children, and we can have here's the parent, and here is the application, here's another. So we can see that this generates seed events and connects the parent ECU, in our case, parent repository, with all the children. On the right here, we can see the Jenkins podcaster plugin. We also have a Jenkins service here, plus something else. But the point of this image is for those who are probably not that used to Eiffel, is to see that how this all comes together. And the point is that we can and will be able to track down from the source change, from the application, from the ECU, to the activity triggered, activity finished, activity started, and artifact created over there. We can see in the bottom here. We haven't yet finished that, but the thing is that we will have a service over here who will make the ECU connect to the build itself also. So there are some services that isn't part of this image, but the sake of this image is just to show the setup we have today with the events and the services to support the event. Trying to move away from the monolithic approach when it comes to event generation or event publishing or event processing, what words you are more familiar with. So I will wrap this introduction up by making some bold statements. When I before this, try to sit down and think about, as I wasn't part of creating this, but what is the purpose of the CD event and what is the purpose of SSE event? The most obvious, for me at least, plus for the CD event is that it's a quite generic event. We could support a wide variety of use cases. It could be twisted as a negative side as well, but for now it's a positive thing that if you don't know how to solve a situation, you can use the CD event. But this could be most related to our use case, but perhaps maybe it's not a negative thing, but it could be a negative thing. It could be overused. But it's about here that we haven't seen any obvious downside. So maybe we don't overuse it. I don't know. Other than the potential for our solution to become very cluttered with CD events over time. Currently, we only have this service to publish the CD events, but in time we'll have a lot of services who will make great relationships between different kinds of events. And then we will have, I don't know, in maybe a few years, maybe we'll have a solution where it's CD events all over the place. And you need to be very good at querying to find the information you would like to compile. So for the one who are not that into the solution itself, maybe we'll go to the SSE event and try, okay, I will find information if I find the SSE events. But in our case now, that is a kind of yes answer. If you find the SSE event, you get a sub part of the answer you're after. But you need to take a step back and find another event to get the relationship up, to get it complete answer you are probably after. Because maybe you don't know what you're after. You need to know the model to actually be aware of the answer you think you're after, so to say. And now the bold statement here, maybe the community will backfire. It's not a suggestion. There are more statements to trigger the thoughts of everybody. The SSE events. And the question is more like, is there a way, or how could we utilize this with SSE events? Possible? Yes, no. I'm open for comments here. Maybe. There could be a motivation to extend the SSE links with the subject, with an S, plural subjects type list, except in SSE as targets. Or extend SSE links with an element type, except in a CD as target. And the second one, I don't know, actually. I just thought about it. And my intention for the second line here was more or less to turn the relationship around. Maybe if you think about it in SQL way, maybe it's the wrong thing to think about, but I just put it on the slide to have it there. Because what I thought was that, okay, the complexity is that you need to take a step back to get the complete answer. But if you're not aware of that, you need to take a step back in the model. If you can relate to CD event, you at least tell the user or the viewer that, okay, you have a relationship backwards, but maybe that's totally off. I don't know. So these two, and though these two statements are actually with the Git in mind, like I'm thinking of Git here. So if the protocol isn't intended, like SSE, if it's not intentional, okay, we shouldn't mirror a specific source change management system, then it's like, okay, we can discard those statements. But for the start of the discussion here, we have those two to start with. If no one else has something else to want to please do. And that's for the introduction. I jump back to that slide. You probably start from there.
Yeah. So
I hand it to Shri.
yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. So as a community, we are here today, and what better than a community to openly discuss about the thoughts that we have. Thank you, Fredrik. That was a very good approach that I hope our community got to know how we are practicing it. But again, I'm here to know if there are any thoughts that is running in your mind because your organization or let's say your team would be using Git submodules. Any points over it that you would want to share if you're already using certain things, and we'll also ponder upon these thoughts today. Yes.
So I think the logical thing is to have the SEC and the SES linked directly to the submodule commits. In other words, the bottom suggestions there. Probably not without an intervening composition, but linked directly to it.
Right.
I mean, after all, that's using a composition like you're doing it is totally fine, but it seems like a bit of a workaround, at least for the submodules. Then you mentioned you had bitbake recipes, I believe, referencing. Yeah, we have the same situation. So we also have a separate service that figures out what code commits are referenced in the recipes and sends a composition for that. Pretty much the same thing. We also use repo, which is another submodule adjacent way. I don't know if you use it too, perhaps. So you have multiple levels of source code references. I did a presentation about that at the 2022 summit, so you can watch it on YouTube if you want. But I would suggest that we extend the SSE with the ability to make these links. The only drawback is that it raises the complexity and of actually implementing sending of SSE. Of course, these things would be optional and not mandatory, but it's fairly complicated to send SSE and SES events if you're doing it in a plugin or whatever you're using. So adding this in as an additional burden could be perhaps problematic, and in that sense, be easier to have as a separate service. But I think the right thing to do is include it in the SES, SCC, and SES.
Yeah. As a plugin, I think it would be really hard because the relationship looks differently. Bitbake.
If I can clarify, I'm not suggesting that we include the bitbake references in only the submodule references should be included in the SEC. Other types of non-Git references should be made outside. Yeah. On the other hand, that creates a situation where you have some links in the SEC, but you also have the composition. So in a way, it's like the worst of both worlds. But I sort of philosophically, I still think it's the right thing to do. But I certainly do not suggesting that we should have like a bitbake parser in your Gary plugin or however you do it.
Also, I guess Edwin has something to add on.
Yes, just for clarification. So you mean if you have other libraries that is not Git, for example, if you would have an artifact somewhere that are using in your code, is that link you say that we should not?
Yeah, I mean, if you have some kind of text reference in a file, either it's a bitbake recipe or it could be any other form of build system where you reference other. Then that probably doesn't belong in the SSE because it's not like tied to the source control system.
Okay, so if we would have a build system delivering a library, as an artifact created somewhere, if we would like to link that to the code that uses that would not be in the SSE. It would be like in the CD.
Yeah, I think that would be a CD. Yes.
Okay.
If you need that sort of source, I mean, one way of doing it could be probably to have the resulting artifact of that build would link to both source code you're building, but also the additional artifacts you bring in the form of libraries. That's another option as well. I haven't given that too much thought, so.
Because that would give the traceability more clean if it would be as directly to the SSE, I guess. But why not? Is that a gut feeling, or what is the reasoning that
why the SSE shouldn't link directly to
artifacts, for example?
For me, it's more of an implementation. I mean, no, both implementation thing, but also, I mean, philosophically, it's not the source. The commit itself doesn't know about any other artifacts that you have. but it does know about the submodule that built into the source control system.
But does it know about the library that it's using?
No.
Okay.
It only knows, if you have a Git and a commit, you have the magic Git links file. I don't remember how it's implemented, but it's a part of Git. It knows how it works. But if you have another like text manifest file that references Gits, sure you can have that, but it's not part of Git.
It's part of the code, but not Git, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's not built into the system, so it probably should be outside, I think.
Yes. I'm so glad that the community has been having this discussion so that we could come to a right approach. Over to you.
I will see if you manage to finish in a good approach.
One of those, maybe not the right one.
Yeah, no, I think it's very good that you raised the philosophical question there, and I would like to clarify that question maybe a bit as well. And I think that ties into the discussion about the restructuring of the source code events as well, quite heavily, because you now talk about that the source SSC event is very much tied to the Git. And there you have submodules, but you don't have any knowledge of any other artifacts that are brought into the repository or external libraries suffice. But in my mind, the source change is actually more of it's the entity where you put together a new version of your change, which then includes, in some sense, also the baseline of upstream things in it. Could be either submodules brought in as source code, could be artifacts brought in as artifacts, which may or may not have been published through Eiffel events. So that will more or less be the baseline of upstream things that you bring into your source change. If you think about Python, it would be your dependencies YAML file. Everything in that file is your baseline for upstream dependencies that you are bringing into your source change. Then the philosophical question becomes, is the baseline or composition, as we call it in Eiffel, is that created in time before you create the source change, or is it created sometime just after? Logically, I would say it was created when the developer added it to its own local source tree, and then it was put into the registry by creating the source change. So therefore, the composition of baseline was actually created ahead in time. So then this SCC event should point to a CD event, which contains both the upstream source code references through a submodule and also other artifacts or external files, whatever, which again may or may not have been published through Eiffel events. So there might not always be an event ID to refer to, but also something else. What I'm trying to say is that logically, I think the CD event would come before the SCC event. So the SCC event should point to a CD event that contains upstream event IDs and also other things, maybe. But then we come into the SBOM discussion as well. What is really part of your build? The full SBOM of your inputs. So it's a lot of aspects to this, and I haven't made my mind clear really on what to do in what situations. I don't know, Tobias or anyone else who has maybe done this. You're using submodules as well in some places, right? Do you have some best practice or guidance?
I don't know. We use that in our CF framework to develop. But I just do we get some in it for myself. Work that much with it.
So there is no CD event, or there must be some SCC event for that submodule commit once it was done as well, I guess. Or,
yeah, you send from the in the sub.
Anyway, some thoughts.
For how we do it is that the build comes after the change, so it will be really hard. And then if we would, in the scenario where you have to build in the SCC, we break I'm not studied very hard, but you break the rules that you shouldn't modify an event when it has been stored. So in our case, we cannot link the build to the SSE events because it hasn't been built before the SSE event has been published. So the SSE event published and then the build comes sometime after.
Yeah, for sure. The build comes after, but the composition, the baseline is really part of your source change. That was something that happened before. So you bring in what version of this Python library should I have in my source change? That's something you decide actually before you commit it or push it to your Gerrit or whatever.
Okay.
But then of course you build it afterwards, and then the build will obviously tie to the source changes.
I know Anders had a question in the chat. You can read it.
Okay, I read Anders' question. How do you maintain the relationships between parent and child repository references if they change over time?
The quick answer is we don't maintain the relationships. We send a new SSE events upon, go back here. Each time when, for example, if I understood the question correctly, is that if a child is changed, it obviously needs to update the reference in the parent, and then the parent and the child publish a new event, and there will be a new event for the parent to be queried for. It's shown in this. So this will happen again. The service will do its thing once again and send a new CD event with the updated, not updated, but new SSE events related inside that CD event. So it will be a new version. It will be a new CD event in another timeline. So in our queries, we pick the not the latest, but the one comes latest in time. So it will be a new model, this setup will be sent. So we don't, as I said earlier, we don't break the rules of modifying SCC events that has already been stored. So I don't think I meant that, but to be very clear, we don't maintain or modify anything. We send new events when something is updated, to be very explicit in the answer.
Yes.
I have another question. Now when we talk about the source change, I had a similar question yesterday also, but now we talk about Git. But for me, and when I read the protocol, it can be clear case, it can be SVM. So looking into the structure of only how Git handles it, I guess doesn't need to be the truth. We also need to, it can be other things, or should we adapt it to remove it against an SVM? Because we have other things that could be sources. That's why I'm struggling.
Yeah, we have other things that could be sources, but I mean, the reason for clear case being there, Subversion and Mercurial, I guess, are obviously historical reasons. At the time, 2016, when this was done, of course, Git was already a big thing, but it wasn't the only thing. It was the biggest thing already done, but not the only thing. And we thought that when open sourcing this, when creating a new version of the protocol, we should make room for other version control systems that would appear, since Git raised quite quickly, and we didn't want the protocol to rotten just because another source control system came up. So we thought it would be good to make room for that in the protocol. But now, after these 8 years, there has been no real competitor to Git. We have different version control systems on top of Git, with GitHub and GitLab and everything. Bitbucket. But I personally think that Git will be the thing for the foreseeable future. So when we now revise the source change events, I would recommend that we make them tailored for Git specifically. Not for GitLab or GitHub or Gerrit, but for Git. I think that makes sense to me at least.
But then we come to the you know what I mean. But what is a source then? Because I guess Git will not be there forever. If we should, or what is a source?
The source change, or
Source change. Yeah.
I mean, the source is your code, but the source change is the state of your source code. Yes. When creating a new source change, what we mean with it in Eiffel is that when you publish it for others to possibly see it somehow, it's not anymore in your local laptop. It's published. It could be a draft or a private version that might not be visible to everyone, but it's still pushed out of your laptop somewhere. Then it's what we say created. The source is great.
So if I press you, if I have code that I push to Artifactory, and then I push it to Artifactory, and then I push it to Artifactory, and is that the source or is it the artifact?
Then it's not Git anymore.
It has to be a source.
I think what the events we talk about here should be managed through Git. If we should handle Artifactory as a version control system, that's maybe another set of events.
Yeah. Thanks.
If there are no more thoughts, then I'd just like to say that, sometimes, oh yes, please, I'm sorry, before I continue.
Why did you decide on that as an architecture instead of, for example, delivering artifacts and building them together, the artifacts at build time instead of including all the source code in one repository? I'm just curious about the approach because I know how some modules can be quite messy. So I'm just curious about the design approach.
If your question is about why do we have the setup as a parent and children use submodules, yeah, I have no idea. It was before my time in Volvo, but I assume that mine has the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it comes from historic, of course. Previously, we started with like Moderator. It's same case in Ericsson, by the way. But I guess it's the, yeah. So when you start with Moderator and then try to go module device, and then the business grows, and then you have product built upon products. So you have one product that is producing an artifact, but it's also used as a source library on another product. So I can give an example. We have a product which produces an artifact as a microservice for the cloud native, but it is also used as a submodule in our virtual product, legacy. So we are reusing the same source code, but producing different products. Yeah.
I might.
Yeah.
I was curious because that, for example, take Python or Docker, for example, in this case, they would deliver different types of versions of the same artifact of particular architectures defined by different things like that. So then you wouldn't need a submodule in that case. Because you technically you can build this module separately for different architectures and such. And I understand for historical reasons or for legacy reasons. Legacy is a pain, and we have 15 years of legacy we have to maintain. So I know the pain there. But thank you for the answer.
Also, my take on that was more of, when we are also moving towards more of microservices in certain domains, the reusability becomes more of a component, as you just said. So rephrasing that, these are the two factors that would push you to probably go ahead with that. Yeah.
Also, some reflection on the source. I totally agree with Emil that the source change we should stick to it, and then if we see GitLab and others like based on Git, so let's say talk about merge request. What is a merge request? It's a creation of a branch, and then you are committing to that branch for a certain amount of time, and then you are again merging it back to master, right? But the underlying operation is always Git. So if the protocol is built on top of Git, and then for an example, there is an artifact where a source code is going to an artifact, then it's not Git. So it's not a source change, it's an artifact change, while anything going to Git is a source change. That way, it will define like philosophically. I think it will keep things more clean.
Yeah, I'll puzzle on that as well. But I think the SSE is maybe should stick to the representation of the state in Git. So if you add a document or like a readme to Git, then it's Git, then it's part of SSE. But if you add a document in some other place, it should be another event, like artifact or whatever. Currently it's an artifact, but maybe in the future there will be events supporting artifactory events, something.
Well, keeping tab of the time, I would say probably we stop it here. Also, we could discuss more about it during our breaks because this gives such an avenue for us to discuss and have open talks about it. Given the fact that you could explain this, thank you so much, Fredrik, and thank you for the participation that we had today. Because I give it back to Edwin.
And thank you, Shri. Interesting. I want to talk more about this. Discuss. I'm not convinced yet. So.